Girl,
Girl,
bye. Girl, bye.
bye, girl, bye.
Girl, bye. Girl, bye.
Welcome to your safe space, honey. This is Girl Bye, the podcast amplifying queer voices and kicking down the doors to so-called normalcy. Get ready for real talk, fierce discussions, and a whole lot of yes, honey. Hi, and welcome to Girl Bye. Today, our guest comes from the Queen City, not originally from there, but has officially made it and got crowned. The one person that you can see throw it back a drink and drop it like it's hot. Calvin, how are you doing?
What an intro. I am fabulous. How are you doing, Manny?
I am doing great, and I am so excited to have you with us today. Tell our viewers a little bit about who you are.
Yeah, so I'm originally from Virginia Beach, from the Tidewater area. I moved to Charlotte a couple of years ago. Love it here. Don't know if it's going to be, long term yet. Still figuring that out.
So let's start with
Yeah.
before you ever moved to Charlotte.
Okay.
As a person growing up in Virginia
Mhm.
Beach area,
Yeah.
I will say from my experience in Virginia Beach, that is partially a military area,
Very
and
much so. Yeah.
life's a little different when it's near a military place.
Okay.
So tell us a little bit about when
Yeah.
you officially knew you were part of the queer community.
Okay. I would say, I mean, my whole life I've always felt kind of different. I feel like most of us kind of go through the same journey. I wasn't really like the other kids, specifically the other boys. They wanted to go play sports and wanted to play video games, things like that, and I was never really into that. And I would say, if I'm being honest, I didn't even know what being gay was until someone asked me if I was. And I'm like, like, what's that? And for the longest time, I was just being myself, just being this happy, jolly kid. But as you get older, your mind gets populated with a lot of different information. It definitely changes your view on life. So here I am just kind of minding my business, and I would get asked, like, are you gay? And I didn't like the sound of it, so I would just say no. I'm like, no, no. You would, play the role of that, straight person or that, society normal person. But I would say the first time that I knew that I was different was probably the 6th grade. I remember walking down the hall and there was this teacher. He wasn't my math teacher, but he was like another he was another like group of students, like their hub or whatever. He was their
Yeah.
math teacher. I won't say his name, but I do remember him to this day. And I remember always walking by his class and always just getting an extra peek. I'm like, looking real good today. Or I like those pants he's got
Yes.
on. He's filling them out nicely. Or that's a nice shirt he's got on. You know what I mean? And I remember like just being so drawn to him. And I'm like, what is this? Because at the time, I thought I was attracted to girls. But as I got older, the spectrum definitely led more towards the same sex. But I feel like that's when it started. Me just always being different. But I would say around middle school is when I realized like, oh, I am attracted to the same sex.
Yeah.
And it's definitely been a journey growing up in Virginia Beach, especially my area. It's very country, very rural. I mean, we have farms, hogs, chickens, horses. Like it's that type of environment. And there weren't a lot of people around that were, let alone looked like me, but also were like me in the sense of sexuality. So I didn't really have any role models or any idols growing up that I could either mimic or strive to be like. So that was kind
Yeah.
of challenging and still is sometimes.
Yeah. I find that to be hilarious because I want to say I was in ninth grade.
Hmm.
Yeah, my freshman year of high school. I still may or may not have that teacher's phone number in my phone.
I know. My gosh.
No, I'm just kidding. I definitely don't have his phone number anymore, but I
Uh-huh.
did have his phone number, and it was a math teacher. And I never did anything with the teacher.
Yeah,
No, we didn't
here.
cross any lines. Like, I don't
Yeah.
want anybody in the
Same
comments to be
here, yeah.
thinking like anything crazy. Like, don't
Yeah,
go after the teacher. If you know me and you know who the
of
teacher
course.
was, don't go after the teacher. He was fine. He never crossed any lines. I literally had his phone number because I was
Yeah.
I would help like tutor students and stuff in math, and so like sometimes he would have
Oh,
me
okay.
like go to these different things to help out, and like I was really good at math. Like I was really good at math, and so
Uh-huh.
I would help out. But it was crazy because I never really thought about it until one day after
Yeah.
school we were like doing this like math tutor thing, and school's over, so like teachers kind of go from like teacher mode to like who they are outside of work mode, and
Yeah.
so
It's like a
uh
switch that just
yeah, so he was a mixed teacher, and he had this like short curly hair, and he
wow.
popped in his earrings and grabbed his bag, and I was like, "Ciao, who
What
are
is that?
you?" I was like, "Who is this? Who is
Life's
this?"
so
Yeah,
different.
yeah, yeah. So I
Get
just
out
find
of
it so
here.
funny
That's
because yeah,
yeah.
I had the hots for that man.
You sound like me. We have a very similar story because mine was also he was kind of racially ambiguous to this day. I'm not sure what his ethnicity was, but he also had kind of the shorter curly hair, and that's just funny. That is kind of the same thing.
Yeah. I don't know. He did it for me. I was like, "Ooh, who's this teacher?" And I
Yeah,
had never really like up until that point, I never like found a teacher attractive. So it was like that was like the
yeah,
first time in my
yeah,
life where like I saw a teacher and I was like, "Ooh, that teacher's like hot. Like I'll go to his class. I'll be on
yeah.
time."
So now I'm curious. Like, was he like a bit on the younger side at the time? Was he like an older, giving like daddy
No, he
vibes?
was
Like,
super
what
young.
was?
He was
Oh,
like
okay.
I want to say he might have been 28,
Oh,
29 at the
wow.
time.
Oh, really young. Okay.
Yeah. No, he was
Yeah.
young. Yeah, like he had gotten
Yeah.
into school. He was like I want to say he was not if he was 30, I'd be gagged. Like I don't
Yeah.
even think he was 30 yet. Yeah.
Mm. Yep. That
No,
would
he
have
was
been
young. The only
it.
young teacher in the whole school. Like every
See?
other teacher that I had was like 65.
Right. Same here. So I'm sure
Maybe
he
that's
definitely
all it
stood out.
was. It was just the age.
It was the youth.
The youth. That's all it was, the youth.
My gosh, that's
Um,
so funny.
yeah. So figuring out that
Yeah.
you are different at such a young age can be hard for anyone.
Hmm.
Especially at that time you are going through puberty and like still finding out who you are
Yeah.
as a human in general. When did you officially uh, kind of accept it for yourself that you were gay?
Hmm. Um.
Still haven't?
I. Oh. Quick intermission. Hold on. Let me get someone.
Yeah.
No, no, I'm just joking. No, that's a good question. Honestly, it's something that has taken a long time to really accept, and it's something that I feel like I wouldn't say I still struggle with. I sometimes I look back and I'm like, gosh, like I wish I came out sooner, or I wish I accepted myself sooner, because I feel like I've
Yeah.
wasted time or I've missed out on opportunities because I was either living a lie or just not really being open and honest with myself. Um,
Yeah.
because I think because of my upbringing, which don't get me wrong, I had an amazing childhood. My family's fantastic, but I think my upbringing in my hometown, growing up in the church, all of that, it made it really difficult because and this is going to probably sound crazy, but I feel like I went through a phase where I was grieving because I knew that I wasn't straight, and I knew that lifestyle I would never have, which now kind of sounds like come on, let's not be dramatic. But I remember going through almost like a depression because I'm like, well, I want to
Yeah.
date a woman and get married and have kids, and you kind of have that normal lifestyle, and I'm like, gosh, well, if this is my destiny, then I'll miss out on a lot of that. So I remember just kind of going through
Right.
those waves up and down of anxiety and depression for sure. But I would say probably when I got to college, And I feel like a lot of people go through that when you are away from home. Your parents aren't in the next room. You have your own space. That's when you can kind of
Yeah.
explore and, figure out your self identity. And I had friends around that were very supportive of that, that were either already openly out or were maybe figuring out themselves as well. And we kind of grew and bloomed together, which was really nice. And I think by the time I graduated up to now, it's like I'm a little bit more comfortable in my skin. Come on, Beyonce. I'm cozy with who I am at this point. But there's
Yeah.
still some work to do for sure. I won't lie to you.
Yeah, and that's awesome to be able to express that because I think a lot of people want to say, I live my authentic self every single day right off the bat. And I think a lot of people
Mhm.
are afraid to actually say, I'm still working through it. I'm still trying to
Yeah.
figure it out and I'm still trying to make it a process. I think for me personally, living more authentically myself came more out of like frustration and anger and like really getting
Oh
to a
wow.
point of like hating myself for not being myself and
Hmm.
seeing a lot of situations that I put myself in to make other people happy and make other
Mm,
people feel a certain type of way where I
yeah.
didn't want to do that anymore.
Hmm.
So I think the one thing I would say is that like for me personally, going through that mentally really pushed me into living more of who I want to be and where I want to be.
Yeah.
Also, Beyonce helped me out in
Yeah.
that where she let us know that you don't have to attend every single event you're invited to, you know?
Yeah.
And I
Yeah.
think
Hmm.
that kind of eye-opening moment for me was kind of huge because it was like,
Hmm.
well, if you're invited somewhere and these people don't accept you for who you are, just don't
Hmm.
go. It's
Yeah.
okay. You're not.
Absolutely.
It's okay. Just
It's all right.
decline.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Exactly. Protect your
So it
peace at
takes a
that
little
point.
bit. Yeah,
Yeah.
and it takes a little bit of time to get to that point. So growing
Mm,
up in such a small country town, what
yeah.
did you expect it to be, and what was it like?
Hmm.
Yeah,
Um. Hmm. To be honest with you, I didn't have because it was something that was so abnormal, especially where I'm from.
yeah,
There was no rubric, there was no playbook on how this would go. So it was actually kind of lonely, I'll be honest. Growing up, I had a lot of friends and a lot of family, so I wasn't physically alone. But when you're kind of walking through this journey by yourself, it can be you feel like you're alone because you don't know who you can talk to. You see how other people react when they're talking about another person that's gay or another person that's a part of the queer community, and you're like, deep down, you're like, oh my god, like you're not talking about me, but you're talking about me. You know what I'm saying? Um,
yeah,
and sometimes that would change how I would operate and how I would interact with people when I would see that side of them, just because I felt uncomfortable. If I say something or if I dress a certain way or if I act this way, are you gonna scold me? Are you gonna beat me up? Or are you gonna, you just don't know. So, I think that's why I kind of lived really under a rock in terms of my sexual awakening and my sexuality until I
yeah,
moved away into the city. And then that's
right,
when some of those passions and some of those interests that were suppressed kind of came to light. And a lot of people that
yeah,
might be tuning in, I'm sure they've had the same experience when you're in a small town. It's just that mindset. You only know what you see, I guess, and when you don't see certain
right.
things, it's almost like it doesn't even exist, or it's an illness, or it's a sickness. When that's not the case.
Yeah, a lot of
Mhm.
people leave these small towns, right, to go to
Yeah,
school and stuff like that. And when you
absolutely.
get to these schools, you are kind of pushed into this community of people that are very
Yeah,
different. Everybody's
yeah.
freshly out of their parents' houses, living recklessly and
Oh
enjoying
yeah.
life. And I think it's a very different perspective.
Hmm.
Definitely coming as a small town. When you officially went to college,
Hmm.
what kind of got you a little bit more out of your shell to be more yourself in college?
So it's funny, and I've been out for a minute, so let me like jog my memory. But so I went to VCU, Virginia Commonwealth University in Richmond. And it was still very much a PWI, but it was probably one of the more diverse PWIs in the state. So I came across people from all walks of life, right? Regardless of race, language, sexuality, things like that. And my freshman year, the dorm that I lived in, now I was a business major, but somehow I got placed in like the artsy or the arts I guess dorm, I guess you can say, where most people who were either in theater or performance art, sculpture, like it was just kind of a mixture of
Yeah.
folks in that discipline. And I remember just meeting a lot of people who were either a part of the community or, like I said, were figuring themselves out. And we all kind of became a group of friends. And I remember before going to college, I had never been in a gay space. I had never been to a gay club. I had never been to a drag show. Like all of this stuff was so foreign to me. And there was this bar slash club down the street called Godfrey's. And every Wednesday was Wild Out Wednesday, where college students would go. And it's so funny because their slogan, I don't know if I can say this, but it was you have to be 18 to come, 21 to swallow at Club Godfrey's. And that's and we were 18, so we were like, we can go. We don't have to be 21. Like, we just can't drink or,
Yeah.
you know. And we were there at Kid You Not Manny every single Wednesday. It didn't matter if we had an 8 a.m. that next morning. It didn't matter what
Yeah.
time we got home. We were there every Wednesday, and they would have drag shows. And we would just dance, dance, dance. My friend group, I mean, we could have a party all by ourselves, right? But I would say that, believe it or not, was kind of the start because I had never, like I said, I had
Yeah.
never seen a drag show before. I had never been around a queer space like that where you were free to dance how you want to or talk to whoever you want to. It was very freeing and liberating because when you've been, I guess, hiding for so long and being able to finally, well, come out. It was
Yeah.
just really, really, really something special. So I would say that's when it started. I met a group of amazing people, and you know, we started going out. Now, I wouldn't suggest that. You know, that's not everyone's route to go out and party to find yourself. That's kind of
No,
how it
yeah.
happened. You know,
Yeah.
for me, and it was great. But that's how it started. Yeah,
You met the theater kids
yeah.
and the theater kids party.
I was like,
Yeah.
I want to say that, but yeah, that's really how it
Yeah, the
started.
theater kids party. I
Okay,
was a
they
theater
get
kid.
down.
I
Oh,
love theater. I loved band. And one thing I would like to kind of touch on a little bit is like whatever you believe in for the people listening, but like ultimately it is ironic that
mhm.
out of all of the dorms in the place that you could have been placed, you ended up in this space that is so accepting of like you figuring out who you are and
Yeah,
being able to like take that time to do so, which I think might have been
absolutely.
different if you ended up in like the football dorm.
Hmm.
So
Maybe that would have been that bad, you know?
wait, let me not say that, right?
I'm
Let's
just
be real.
joking.
The
No,
football
yeah, yeah.
players, there's
Okay.
always that one football player. Just saying. But definitely, I think it's just very ironic that you get to that point where like you get placed almost in like the perfect spot for you
It
at that time.
it really was, yeah.
Um, especially kind of going into college. I feel like when you leave your house for the first time to
Hmm.
go live anywhere, whether you're going to college or whether you're getting your first apartment or whatever,
Yeah,
there's such a amount of change that you go through as an individual at that time in your life
yeah.
that
It's very important.
being placed in that type of situation really helped you kind of just ultimately figure out a lot in your life in such a shorter
Yeah,
period of time because you had the
yeah,
ability and those safe spaces to feel that way. And I wanted to
absolutely, yeah.
harp on that because as we kind of
Yeah.
see, a lot of these safe spaces are leaving. So a
Hmm.
place that really helped shape you as an individual and really get you to understand who you are is so
Yeah.
important. And for
Hmm.
everybody listening, I know it's kind of tacky, or maybe not tacky, but just like you hear this all the time, but like support your local queer
Oh,
spaces and really go to
100%.
these places, be a part of these things and be a part of the community because you could be a part of a program or
Hmm.
um, a club or a hangout space or
Yeah,
whatever that might be the one spot that that small town person
Mhm.
ends up at for the first time in their lives, and
Yeah.
they realize that they feel home, they feel
Mhm.
accepted somewhere,
Yeah.
and that's so huge.
Mm. That's no, you're absolutely right, Manny. That's exactly what it felt like. And I'm a huge advocate for supporting your local queer spaces. And I'll be honest, I mean, sometimes I get mixed up of what group I'm a part of, if it's Gen X, Gen Z, Millennial, but I feel like the folks that are coming up now, I think they have, not saying that it's easier, but I feel like there are more resources. I feel like there are more people that have kind of paved
Yeah,
the way where you're not necessarily laying down the asphalt. You might have to fill a pothole or two, but like the path has been made for you.
yeah,
And that's something that I definitely wish I had,
yeah,
because like I said, I feel like there were opportunities that I missed out on, maybe even relationships or just time that I spent, wanting to change myself or praying it away. And all that time I could have just been perfecting, myself and my character and my personality. So I'm just a huge advocate for that. Definitely, support your local communities, resources, and queer spaces. 100%.
it is so amazing to me where we are now. So to be at a place now where Drag Race airs almost every Friday of the year at this point
Yeah. Hmm.
is crazy to me. I remember like my family gathering around the TV to watch like Amazing Things Friday night at 8 p.m. So it's just crazy how like we
It's
have
changed.
come
Yeah.
so far.
Hmm.
And I think a lot of people, and I know this is going to sound terrible, but I think a lot of young people take it for granted and don't realize
I
how
think
quickly
they
a
do.
lot of these things can be taken from us.
Yeah, absolutely.
You know?
Um, yeah, I do feel the same way sometimes, and it's really unfortunate because, like you said, I mean, I won't even give us a lot of credit, but those that kind of came before us,
Yeah.
really kind of set the tone, set the path for us, and you don't want to come after them and have all that hard work be in vain. So it's definitely something. I mean, we have a right to be in certain spaces. We have a right to be who we are freely without judgment, without being scared of what can happen, but also show gratitude as well. You can pay homage to our ancestors in our community. I think that's something that's always been really important to me. Yes, we have a ways to go in our community, especially when it comes
Yeah.
to our lovely trans brothers and sisters, but uh, there's work to do, but still just be grateful for how far we've come to. So
Yeah. And
yeah.
I remember that the first Pride was a protest. And I
Mm,
think that
yeah, that's
right
so
now,
good.
more than ever, we need to use our Pride events
Mhm.
as a protest. Yes, we should be celebrating and stuff, but this is
Yeah.
also the time for us to stand hand in hand with
Mhm.
all of the community
Yeah.
and really lifting each other up and really
Mhm.
making sure that as a community we stand together
Mhm.
because it's really going to help us kind of continue the projection forward,
Mhm.
um, and really just show that as a community we can come together. And I think there's so
Yeah.
many people in the queer space right now that we could be making change. We can
You
be
see,
grouping together and making change. We're no longer the one gay kid in school. So we
those days are
have to
long
be
gone.
able to get together and really push each other to achieve new things. So I just
Yeah.
encourage everybody out here during your Pride festivals and living your dreams and having a ball.
Mhm.
Make sure that you remember that this ultimately is a protest for us to have equal rights and for us to be able to continue to have our queer spaces in the communities that are trying to close those down and take us out of it.
Yeah. No, that's a great call out, Manny.
Didn't mean
Something
to go
that
to church.
no, I mean, I almost got my tambourine out because you were showing up preaching. I mean, but no, that's such a valid point. I mean, it's slightly related, not really, but like you think about people who want to change the course of their family lineage and break generational curses and things like that. It's kind of the same thing where we have been put on this earth for a purpose, whatever that may be. And a part of that is really setting the tone for the folks that are coming after us. We should be making it easy for them, not harder. And just because you and your bubble, everything's peaches and cream and everything's so perfect, there are people in your community on the same team as you that don't have the same experience. And what can we do to rally together to um, make this world safer, but also more free? So, um,
Yeah,
yeah, that's heavy, but it's so true.
it is. Yeah. I didn't think we were going to be preaching to the children today.
Yeah, no.
We are.
Child, look, they need
But
it. No, I'm just
yeah,
messing. I'm just
no,
kidding.
they do need some. But yeah, so when
Yeah.
you kind of sit and think about kind of where you were to where you are now in life,
Mhm.
um, tell us a little bit about what your experience was with bullying and things like that.
Ooh. Oh man. So I'll start off by saying growing up, I think because I don't want to assume, but maybe because of my size, I wasn't always say picked on because like you can't tell, but I'm like 6'2", well over the amount of pounds. And I'm not, I'm a, big boy. Hello. And
Yeah.
I've always
Hello.
just in case if anyone, I'm just playing, but I've always been, of a bigger stature, so I feel like people wouldn't mess with me because they see a big black kid. They're like, no, we're probably not gonna go that direction. But I will say it's so interesting because remembering my grade school years, the people that would either say something or tease or make fun were people that looked like me. I feel like under I feel like other kids, whether they were white, Asian, Hispanic, whatever the case was, they
Yeah.
were more accepting, which was interesting. And I mean, that's a whole other conversation, but it was really a lot of other black kids that would have something to say about how I
Yeah.
acted or things like that. And that was always kind of unfortunate because you would think of all
Yeah.
people that your own sort of kind would be either more supportive or more accepting, but that just wasn't really the case for me. So, kind of two parts there. Thankfully, I didn't have to deal with as much, say, bullying or teasing as maybe
Yeah.
some other folks that came up within the queer community, but there were definitely comments, there were definitely slurs at some point, but it
Yeah.
came from my own, which kind
Yeah.
of hurt. I'm not going to say it hurt more or less, but it was just more disappointing than anything. Now that I look back at
Yeah.
it, yeah.
Do you think that that is culturally driven, or do you think that it was more of just like, well, we look alike, we should be more similar, um, feel and act like?
Yes. I think it was a little bit of both. There's definitely a culture piece to it, and then I think also too, because like again, because of my stature, people would always ask like, "Oh, like, do you play football? Do you play basketball? Like, you're tall, you're this, you're that." I'm like, "No, no, I don't." And they'll always be like, "Well, why not?" I mean, I'm like, "Well, I'm not
Yeah.
interested. I'll go to a game, but I'm not interested in playing the sport." But I think it's also a culture piece too, because when you think about like religion, for example, and it's so interesting because there's so many other sins out there that people ignore or overlook,
Yeah.
but they love to talk about those that are either gay or part of the queer community. And I think that's a part of it too. When you're being preached to of like what's going to happen to you because you're choosing love, like, huh? And
Yeah.
when that's kind of beaten into you, I think that um, and that's all that you, and when you see someone that's going against that, then you feel the need to condemn or point the finger when they're not doing anything wrong. They're choosing love at the end of the day. They're choosing happiness, and what's wrong with that? You know what I mean? So
Right.
multi-layered, you're a product of your surroundings, as they say. So when your
Sure.
parents or leaders or people show themselves judging or condemning someone that's different, you're gonna do the same thing because that's all.
Yeah.
And then there's another piece to it where there might be folks that are not, say, secure within themselves and within their sexualities. And they tend to lash out. And I don't mean any harm, but I always say if you're around someone that's doing a little much in response to someone who's gay, then there's probably something going on. There might be
Yeah.
what's the term? The calls coming from the house or something like that, right? Or I probably butchered that, but there's probably something else going on. Is that maybe there's an envious piece there because they see you living your life freely and they can't.
Yeah, I definitely can see that. When you look at like these straight men
Mm-hmm.
that you hear about all this stuff that they say on the internet and all this stuff about gay men and how terrible and blah 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 blah. And next thing that they have a side piece that they've been sleeping with, and the wife ends up with an STD or something because
it's horrible.
something crazy happens. I might cut that. Let me cut that. I don't want to.
That's real though. Maybe too real. I don't know, but
I think that's too real.
You're definitely spinning facts.
Yeah, I think that's too real. But you know, like I think they have a wife, and then they end up having these kids, and I think and then they have this side piece, and I think it kind of maybe that all might go back together. Anybody that's listening that wants to do a thing, go do a study and let us know.
Yeah, I'm interested in that too.
Also, for the people listening, Calvin is 6'5". He's in finance. He's I'm just kidding. You've seen that
so
meme,
close.
right? I'm looking for a man in finance. He doesn't have blue eyes, but if you go over to the YouTube channel, you can see him. You can't see how tall he is, but he's probably a good hugger.
I feel like I do give good hugs, though, honestly.
Yeah, he's a good hugger. He's tall. Are you the big spoon or the little spoon?
Oh, probably my default is big spoon. Wait a minute. Wait, you're giving no time. I can be a little spoon too.
Yeah.
But it also depends on the size of entree. But anyway, it depends. It depends.
It does depend. It does depend. Yes, you are right. It does depend. If you can be the big spoon, if you could be the big spoon for Calvin, I'm sure he would appreciate it. But
yes,
being 6'2" is probably not the easiest thing to be the small spoon.
Ooh,
just saying. No shade.
Yeah,
but
never.
Anytime I'm around Calvin, I feel tiny, and it's great.
No, it's so funny too. I sometimes, and we're this might be a little off track, but sometimes I forget my like size and height because I feel smaller. Like I don't know how to explain it. So sometimes
mentally you're a lady. Mentally, you're like a tiny little lady.
I am the tiniest Southern Belle lady. Okay, so sometimes I have to I would never change myself, but I know sometimes my personality is really big. I'll start singing and dancing in the middle of a grocery store. Sometimes I'm like, how in the hell am I coming across this big guy with this big personality? And I think that's sometimes a little intimidating, which that's a whole other topic in terms of like dating and like being approached. But anyway, yeah.
Yeah, no, I think it's perfect. And this is a great segue. I feel like you're one of those people where like you walk into the room and people know you've arrived. It's not like, so I can only imagine like when I see you walk into a room and I see you like get the attention in the room, I'm like, I wonder what it's like to like walk into the room and grab that attention so quickly, but in such, and I don't see it as a intimidating way. I see it more like people gravitate towards you as like a really friendly and inviting person. So what's your perception on that?
That's well, first of all, thank you. That's a very kind observation. I really appreciate that. I see, I don't know, it's hard because sometimes I feel that way and then sometimes I don't. Like I'll be honest, I'm all about, being humble, humility. But sometimes when I do walk into a room, I do notice the energy does shift. In some spaces, it's kind of the opposite. And sometimes I feel that I would like to think that I'm, a nice person and I'm approachable. Maybe that doesn't always come across and people don't know how to perceive me at first. And maybe it takes them time to approach me. And I would say too, I feel like I'm a little different than some. I will never forget, quick story. I was at the bar with a son of mine and I went to go use the restroom. I came back and she's talking to this guy. Now, this was actually the same gay club that I mentioned before. And she's straight. So like there was no like he was trying to mack at her or nothing like that. But I started talking to him and I was like asking questions, genuinely trying to get to know more. And he was like, wow, you're like making me nervous. I feel like I'm in a job interview. And I was like, no, 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 I'm just genuinely like trying to talk. So I feel like sometimes too, maybe
Yeah.
my approach might be a bit like, tell me about you. Like, what makes you
Yeah.
thrive? And sometimes people are like, whoa. So, um, in some ways, I feel like it does draw people near, but I think sometimes maybe it's too much.
Yeah.
And I mean, mind you, I would rather be too much than too little, but
Right.
sometimes it's not all that it's cracked up to be.
Yeah.
It's
And
kind
I
of,
think for
oh,
me, the one thing I would say too is that
yeah.
like every time that we hang out, we're in super accepting spaces. So I think it might be a little different too. Like you walk into an office or you walk into a grocery store or something like that, you're going to get a
Mm,
little bit of a different perception as well. And
point, yeah.
yeah, I think depending on the location and where you're at,
Hmm.
but what do you feel it's like dating? Like, what has your dating journey been like from when
Yeah.
you first started dating, which I'm assuming you
Hmm.
probably started dating in college,
Yeah,
um,
definitely. That's right.
and
Hmm.
then when you first started dating, was it strictly an in-person thing? Was it an app thing? And then how has that evolved as part of your dating
I feel like I was a late bloomer, and I feel like I'm still blooming, if that makes sense. So with that being said, I still have a ways to go in working on myself, but I feel like I'm getting a little bit more attention lately than I did before. Because when I was growing up, and even like high school, even the freshman year of college, like I had a great personality. I was fun, I was funny, I was kind, I was thoughtful, I was intelligent, amazing on the inside. The outside was the challenge. You say inside, fabulous, amazing. But on the outside, 'cause, like I wore glasses. I still do. My teeth haven't always looked like this, and like we were just going through the motions, right? But I feel like
journey?
now that we're kind of getting ourselves together, we're more comfortable now. Maybe that's drawing people, but I feel like that's hurt me a little bit because when people do approach me, I'm like, "What are you doing here? Like, are you trying to talk to my friend? Like, he looks great tonight, or are you?" Like, do you help finding something? Like, I go back to my days in a
Yeah.
Target store. So I feel like that's kind of made it a little difficult because people may come
I
with the
can
best of
imagine.
intentions, but I'm like, why are you talking to me? Just because I've never gotten that before. But I will say the few times that I have been either in a relationship or have been talking to someone, it was kind of hard to navigate at first because when you start that journey of acceptance and you kind of have this awakening, it's like you are ready to take on the town, but you have to be wise as well. So I know that there were some apps that were kind of coming out at that time that people would use that would sometimes take care of needs. Most of the time it was in person, believe it or not, in college. I think after was when it became a bit more difficult and where you would maybe kind of default to apps most of the time. But I think in
Yeah.
college was kind of easier because you had friends of friends, or if you were in these diverse spaces, you can kind of tell if the vibe was there, and if things would go to that next level, it would. So it's kind of pivoted
Yeah.
over time to in person, and then now more digitally, I guess.
And I think that that's most people's journey. I think it's the
Mhm.
digital space has just become very different than what it once was. Also,
Yeah,
uh,
for sure.
I'm old enough to still be the Craigslist and Backpage days. So I remember apps being wild, and I
Yeah,
remember, I remember the wildness of what it was
yeah.
to date stuff earlier on before a lot of apps really created. And I remember even like when Grinder first started, and like you would get on Grinder when it first opened up, and like the closest person would be like 900 miles away. You're like, what the is the point of this? So
It's so funny. If I had I guess if I had Grinder when I was like in my small town, that's probably what it would have been too,
yeah,
honestly. I'm
yeah.
like, hey, that far away.
I'm
That's
like, wow,
funny.
this is wild. This is why I gotta move.
Exactly,
But
right.
yeah, but I think as we kind of
Oh,
evolve and grow, I think there was a
yeah.
lot of like technology that came into play that really helped in that place.
It
Um,
has.
Now, what has your journey been in your dating life with the hookup culture type of style? Have you ever been kind of like
Mm.
the hangout bathhouse type of person? Have you
Oh,
ever attended a bathhouse?
that's a great question. So I've never had that experience. I would say like I've definitely have had the occasional hookup, right?
Yeah,
Um, but that's always been difficult for me because I'm very old fashioned, and I know that sounds like, oh brother, here we go. But I still value the whole like meeting someone and
yeah,
getting to know each
falling
other,
in
going
love.
out on dates, falling in love, and like
Yeah,
building a life together. That's what I prefer. That's kind of my go-to. So it's really unfortunate because that's so rare, and maybe it is because of trauma that comes from maybe some of us haven't seen successful relationships within our space, or maybe there's a little bit of self. I mean, there's so many things to uncover that might be
yeah,
the reason why that is. But it's just been difficult because everyone wants to hook up, and I'm like, I actually want to like let's go grab coffee. I want to like talk to you and like get
yeah,
to know you
yeah, yeah.
better. And then
You're
if
like,
it
I want to
gets
know your name.
yes, no, exactly. I'm like, I want to know your name so I can call it out at a job. But so, we can scratch that off the
You
record.
can't
But
you
uh,
can't scream out the name and throw it back at the same time if you don't know
no,
the name.
come on, preaching again, Lord, Manny. No, but but no, to answer your question, yeah, it's just
Yeah.
difficult because like I said, we all have needs and occasionally need a little corny a cop, but it's just hard when you are not like that all the time.
No, yeah,
So
and I
it's
don't,
made
I
it
don't
difficult.
think that, I don't think that you should say, unfortunately. I
Mm,
think in dating in general, right
mm,
now, there's so many more people that are testing out the waters of
mm,
thruples and open relationships and being polyamorous, and I think
yeah.
the mold of what we were
Mm,
all raised on with like you boy, you girl, you get
yeah.
older, have baby, have
Hmm.
live
Yeah.
together, wife cook, man works.
Sounds so
Like
simple.
I think
Hmm.
I think that that storyline was fed to all of us in such a type of way where it wasn't fed to you once, right? Like you saw it in school, you saw it at home, you saw it on
Yeah, everywhere.
TV, you saw it
Hmm.
everywhere. And it was like, this is what love was.
Hmm.
And I think that certain generations have started to like look at these relationships and be like, so this is love, but like this man has been cheating on this woman for 25 years. Like
Mm,
we don't know, we don't want to be a part of that.
yeah. Yeah.
A lot of us grew up in households, especially as millennial, like younger millennials and the Gen Zers. We grew
Hmm.
up in single family homes.
Yeah.
Uh,
Right.
and so I think with us kind of learning that what love is told to us to be successful and
Hmm.
what we've seen with our own eyes as to be successful is a complex. And
Yeah.
so
That's right.
all of us are trying to find out what it is that we like.
Hmm.
And I think that it's so
Yeah.
hard because society is pushing you to like something specifically.
Exactly.
And then you're fighting, what do I like? What do I want? What do I want to see? What do I want to
Yeah.
feel? How do I want to feel?
Hmm.
And I don't
Constant
think that
battle.
you should, yeah, I don't think you should down talk your perception of what you think love is, because at some point in your life, you're going to
Yeah.
bump into somebody that has that perception,
Hmm.
and that wants to do that. And I bring that up on the podcast, and we've been talking about it on a lot of the newer episodes because I think it's so
Hmm.
important that there are people out here who are still what I call my diehard monogamy people. That's what they want to be. They want to find
Yeah.
somebody. They want to love them. They want to be with that person. They want to start a life. They want to create something with that individual.
Yeah.
And
Hmm.
then you have other people that want to be in polyamorous relationships or open relationships. And I think it works for everybody. I think
Hmm.
it's communication that is going to make things work. Because if you're not into that, if that's not your gig,
Hmm.
you don't need to go yuck anybody's yum, but you need to really kind of be honest
You
and
need to be
say, I
honest.
really
Yeah.
like you, but this is not for me. And I
Right.
would rather be in something different. Um,
Mm,
and you never know too, right? It's like you may fall in love with somebody that in the beginning you start your relationship a certain type of way. And then like
mhm,
as time goes on and your journey evolves, that person may come to you and say, I would really like to try this. And you might care for them enough that you're like, let me try this with you, and our communication can stay open, and we can, if I don't like it, you have to be willing to stop, and vice versa. And I think that being able to really use your communication skills and
That part.
knowing your boundaries, I think is so huge. So don't ever down talk your own perception of what you want, because the moment that you do that, feel external people
Yeah.
take that moment and go, they already kind of feel bad about that, so maybe I can change their mind.
Mm. I never thought about it that way. They see an open door and they're like, let
Yeah,
me try to get in
he
here.
unfortunately wants to be monogamous, so maybe
Yeah.
he really doesn't want to be monogamous. Maybe he wants to be a hoe.
Want something
So
else.
let's see, let's find out. And I think,
Yeah.
yeah, and I think that being more clear and just owning into what you like and what you don't like. I think too many of us have gotten to the custom of like, and I think this boils back to a lot of what we keep in trauma, and just like a lot of stuff that we won't let go. It's almost like being sorry or being apologetic about things that we like or want or do, because we have always been sorry for being queer, and always kind of like walking that line of like, it's unfortunate that I'm queer. I should have just been straight. And I think we have to change that narrative, because no one else is going to do it for us.
That's heavy. That's real though. It's because like I think sometimes you don't even realize what you're doing or where it stems from, and I think that's just so interesting because I guess for me sometimes I still feel like, am I enough, or am I good enough? Because it's like I'm doing, for the longest time it was like I'm doing all these wonderful things right, and I'm living a good life, I'm treating people right, I have a good job, I have my own car, I have my own place, like life has been wonderful, thank God. But then it's like this one thing kind of cancels out all of that. Sometimes that's what it's felt like for me. It's like I've done all these
Yeah,
amazing things, not on my own, but I'm in a great place for my age. But it's like because of this one thing, like none of that matters. I could be way
yeah,
worse off. Thank goodness I'm not. So I think sometimes that like voice in your head is always just playing over and over again.
yeah.
And
And
you're
I
right, it's
think
something that needs to
that
change.
yeah, that stems from consistently being sorry for that part of your life. And
Yeah.
we all go through it. I think I've come to a point where I love myself for who I
Yes.
am and who I live authentically, and how I want
Yeah.
to see myself in the mirror every single day.
Hmm.
And straight people don't apologize for being straight. So why do I have to apologize for being gay?
Yeah, right.
If we want to change that perception, we have to change that. We have to be the
Hmm.
ones to say we are enough.
Yeah.
What you have accomplished is amazing. And I think like these are the things that like a lot of people don't typically go out of their way to say to other people, but I feel like a lot of the time, if you don't take a second to like congratulate yourself on where you've been,
Mm-hmm.
um, the moment you sit down and truly like just talk to yourself through it, um, it'll be wild the way you feel.
Yeah, I believe it. Wow.
So making sure that you take that time to congratulate yourself, like really just, and I don't want people to like sit there and like at the end of this podcast just start congratulating themselves. Like really take a minute to like
Yeah.
genuinely mean it. And I
Hmm.
think that moment will change your perspective and change kind of like the burden that you carry. Because a lot of us
Mm.
carry it. And I feel like it's
Wow.
so heavy. And eventually, when that gets lifted, the way that your personality changes is very different,
Hmm.
because you're less apologetic
Hmm.
and you're more authentic.
Yeah. There's That's so good because it's like a shift in like when you it's a shift in mindset and perspective, and I think that essentially when things change in here, it changes your outward I guess
Yeah.
environment. Because I'm really big on expressing gratitude, so there's a lot of times like, Because, like you said, I feel like we are our toughest critics. We're always so hard on ourselves. But sometimes, if you take a
Yeah.
second and really reflect on what you've done and what you've been through, and that you've came out on the other side, you are a badass. But
Yeah.
sometimes life can beat you so hard that you don't see it. But because when I look back too, just like you said, Manny, there are some things that I wish I did differently. There are some things that I wanted to have happen that didn't. But I'm happy where I am, and I feel like after the fact, everything worked out the way that it was supposed to. Because
Right.
I have a stronger appreciation for the things that I do have and the experiences that I've been through. And I mean, as humans, I feel like we're naturally greedy. We're like we want the next best thing, we want the new car, we want the bigger house, and it's like be grateful for what you have because it could easily be
Right.
taken away. And
Yeah,
that goes with materialistic things. That's like if you find love, hold on to that. Okay, if you find that you're at a place where you're out of this dark hole and you're out of this depression and you're finally loving yourself more, hold on to that as long as you can.
Yeah.
Especially nowadays.
definitely. So,
Mhm.
one aspect of your life so far we have not dived into so yet
Mhm.
is your relationship with your family. What was that
Oh.
like,
Hmm.
kind of being younger to now?
It's it's uh it's interesting because my family, I'm a big family guy. I love my family. And I feel like deep down they've always known that something was, going on, or he's a little different.
Yeah,
And thankfully, like I mentioned before, I was blessed to have a great childhood. There was never a time where I felt like my dad would scold me because of how I was acting, or my mom would like lock me in a room because of me being too
yeah,
flaunty or flamboyant. So thankfully, that wasn't the case. Maybe they thought it was a phase, not sure. But I would say that it definitely took some time and still is taking time for them to wrap their head around it. I think a part of them still hopes that, I walk through the door with this beautiful broad next to me and our two kids and our dog, saying, but that most likely won't
yeah.
happen. Well, not most likely, it
Not
won't.
happening.
But
It's not happening.
right, cut it out. No. But it hasn't been easy. I at first I kind of felt like a shift, not so much that I was being disowned, but you just know that the relationship is not the same. And
Yeah,
that was something that was really hurtful to me because I'm like, you guys are my world. And it's like, I'm the same person that I've always been, but you just know a little bit more
yeah,
about me now. And why does that change everything so drastically? I remember, having those conversations and we, would talk about it, and it wasn't really received very well in the beginning, especially because I come from a very religious household. So that was kind of the first thought. What's going to happen to your soul? Where are you going to go after
yeah,
this? But I think over time, I'm not saying it's perfect. So I think time heals all wounds. I think, not saying that being queer is a wound, but like speaking in an analogy, that as time
yeah,
has gone on and they have educated themselves, I have brought content verbally to them about our community and about my life. I've let them into a lot of things, probably more than the average person should. I think they're starting to come around, but it's definitely still a journey for sure.
yeah.
Oh,
And
wow.
I applaud you for kind of talking about it in a space. And a lot of people do spend a long time, with their parents
Yes.
trying to come around. And I think a lot of us, we
Yeah.
need to really take a second to remember that what a lot of people feel when they're the older generations is a lot of passed down thought
100%.
processes. You know what I mean?
100%.
So when you've spent, 30, 40, 50 years of your life thinking a
Hmm.
certain type of way, you really mess with people's perception, right? Like, when you are the little girl, you're like, you end up daddy's little girl, and you end up with this
Yeah.
perception that, like, you're gonna grow up and your dad's gonna beat up your first boyfriend if he hurts you, or like all of
Yeah.
this stuff.
Right.
But each of us ultimately have a different personality,
Hmm.
right?
Hmm.
Being different than what they anticipated you to be will always be a sort of problem within a family unit.
Yeah.
because you're just messing up the perception that they already made.
And that's a lot of time and energy.
Yeah,
And
that's a
I,
lot of time.
yeah. And I feel like too, it's almost like it's like a grieving process, I guess, in a way, because like you said, your parents or your family have this sort of life panned out for you, and that ends up not being the case. They start to think about all the things that they thought would happen that have just been snatched away in like 5 seconds. And like you said, there's so much time that's being put into kind of building this whole profile of your kid, and for them to turn out completely different, you kind of feel lost. You're like, where did I go wrong? Or when did things change?
Yeah,
And it's like, no, like it's not anything that you did. This is just how it's always been.
right.
Um,
And I think that
yes,
that is so beautiful for you to say it like that. Like that is
yeah,
literally the purpose. I think it is crazy. And to them, in their head, it is the death of a person
yeah,
because it is the death of what, or not really the death, but like it is the end of
mhm,
what they thought the rest of their life would be.
yeah,
Um,
that's right.
like
It affects them too.
like all
Yeah,
of those things can really affect, your parents. And I think we've got to give time uh, to people to learn and grow and
mhm,
understand.
yeah,
But I will say that you can only give so long. And if it is abusive, or
yeah,
if they, are really hurtful with the things that they say and things like that, there's also a place to know
mhm,
that you're not going to progress in that particular conversation.
that's
You've
right.
got to
Yeah,
kind of know that. And
hmm,
that's hard. That's
yeah.
hard.
Yeah, no, that's really kind of tough because, like you said, your parents are living life for the first time too, even though they're older than you. So it's like, I understand that you want to be accepted right away, but it's like, let them have their moment. But like you said, to a certain point, like after a while, it's like, all right,
Yeah.
come on, get
Yeah.
with the
You know what I mean?
program.
Like, you
But
can't
easier said than
be,
done.
yeah, you can't be on like your seventh boyfriend and still like, oh, this is just a friend. Like,
Yeah,
come
it's
on.
like, no, really. Yeah, because I feel like too, like even me, sometimes when I come home, there's still family members that are like, you ain't found you a girl yet. I'm like, no, I haven't.
I'm also not looking for one, but
And
thanks.
I'm not looking for one. So it's like sometimes you have to leave people where they are, unfortunately, and only take with you those that will make the journey lighter. So,
Yeah. Yeah. And that's
oh,
huge. You got to be able to go forward with less luggage. Can't carry
yeah.
everybody.
Right. And actually, one thing I just thought about too, because you kind of mentioned the same thing. I'm the only boy. I have one sister. She's had a child, but of course, their names are different now, and I'm named after my father. So sometimes it's like I'm the only one that's really going to carry the name. Who knows what the future may hold? But at this point, I better make this life
Yeah.
great, because in case the name ends with me. But I definitely understand that, like, not pressure, but it feels like a letdown. Even though it's
Yeah.
of course you find out that it's not, but. Mhm.
Yeah, and I think it is a sort of pressure that you do feel because you end up also. I feel like a lot of us ultimately want to make our parents happy, and so I feel like
Yeah,
this
for
is
sure.
where this is where that mental complex I was talking about earlier comes into play. Is that
Yeah,
we try to
right.
like we're so sorry and we try to make things so much better because we do
Mhm.
ultimately want to see these other people happy. There's a point in your life where you can no longer be sorry for who you are because that's just who
Mhm.
you are.
Right.
And I think
Yeah.
it's a rough line, but I think once you finally get over that line,
Mhm.
the perspective is very different.
Yeah. Oh,
So,
that's
in your
heavy.
journey so far, what
Mhm.
happened?
Oh, no, they just reflecting
Oh,
on just that last topic. I'm just like, oh no, sorry,
I
cut me
didn't know
off.
I was. You're making me feel like the old gay in this
This seems
call.
like no, no, no,
Terrible.
no, 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 of course not. No, but that's just some really good gems
Yeah.
there.
In your life journey so far,
Hmm.
you as an individual right now,
Hmm.
if you could go back to your high school self, what would you tell
God.
yourself?
um, hmm, I'm gonna have to think about this one.
Yeah, if you cry, that's extra points.
I'm actually surprised that I'm doing pretty good because I was really afraid, or like, I don't know, maybe I've numbed certain parts of it, but I just
Yeah,
we're doing good tonight. There's a few things, but
you can
if I
say
could
them all.
go, yeah, I'm like, do you have enough time? No, I'm just kidding, but
Yeah, I'll chop out the filler words.
yeah, okay. Well, we're like stalling. I think one thing I would definitely tell myself, and it's really nothing, so profound, but if I could go back to my high school self, I would simply tell him like it's gonna be okay, which sounds so simple, but when you don't know how you're going to navigate through life while being your authentic self because you've been hiding or you've been living a lie for so long, there's a fear there. Um, and I think too, sometimes your mind gets so cluttered with opinions and judgment that you hear from other people, and sometimes you start to believe that, and then it starts to kind of break you down, and it's like, do you even want to live this life like this? And I mean, that's just a whole other topic for another day. But yeah, I would just tell myself that it's going to be okay, and then I would also tell myself to love myself, because I think a lot of times we try to find love in places, and it's difficult because we know that we don't fully love ourselves. So it's like, how can you love someone else? And there was one more too, and I don't know why I can't think of it. Respect your boundaries. I would say that too, because I think sometimes, especially when you are just starting out in this sort of new, either sexual awakening, queer awakening, you sometimes feel like, oh, maybe there's so much time that I've lost, I have to catch up and do all these things. Or sometimes you settle for something or someone that you shouldn't be with, but you just wanted to kind of feel that need. And sometimes you lower your standards, or sometimes you let people overstep boundaries, because you feel that they're providing love when they're not. So it's like, just be, when you get to a point where you love yourself and you set boundaries for yourself when it comes to people that you want to interact with, not just in a relationship, friendships as well.
Yeah,
Just make sure that you don't bend on those boundaries. That's a recent lesson that I've learned, is that I've let people overstep, and it took me a while
yeah,
to wake up and like smell the coffee of like, all right, you're being mean to me, and I've been nothing but good to you, and it's
yeah,
like, come on. So I would say those three things to summarize. Just know that it's going to be okay. Things aren't as dramatic as they
yeah,
seem, and to love yourself fully. And the last one is just to make sure that you stick to those boundaries that you set. Yeah, I
yeah.
think those are the three things
I
I would
love
tell
that.
myself. Mm-hmm.
I love that.
Yeah,
In
the good
your
ones.
journey,
Mm-hmm.
because I know you commented a little bit here on
Yeah.
kind of battling yourself and loving yourself. Was there a time that you either anticipated, like, I'll just be straight and
Mm.
suppress all of my feelings? Or was there a time where you ever thought of, like, just not being here anymore in your journey?
Mm. Um. Wow. Yeah. There. There were a few times where, like, I got to a point where I knew, like, I like what I like, or I'm attracted to what I'm attracted to. There's no changing it. But I think when I was younger, and by younger, just a few years ago, I think due to my faith and how I was brought up, I was at a point where I was like, I just won't do anything. I won't be intimate with a man. I won't kiss. I won't touch. I'll just be to myself, right? Because I'm like, yes, I might be thinking or having these emotions, but if I act out on them, that's like even worse. So I'll just like stay to myself and not interact with the same sex in any way intimately, and just live my life that way. And thinking back, I mean, I couldn't even imagine, like, never trying to seek love or happiness or shoot fun. I remember that time in my life that I thought that I would be able to do that, because I'm like, because like I said, I have these thoughts, I have these passions, these urges. As long as I don't act out on them and I spend the rest of my life either single, because I knew I wouldn't be able to be with a woman and probably please her the way that she would want to be. If I'm being honest, so I'm like, well, if I can't go that route, I'm just here, me, myself, and I. Um,
Yeah.
and now looking back, it seems almost kind of sad that I would even kind of consider that, because I know if I did, I would live a life miserable and wasted from that
Yeah.
perspective. Yeah. Wow. I don't know if I've ever actually
Yeah.
said that out loud. That's interesting.
That is so profound. I mean, that's, I think, a perception
Yeah.
that not a lot of people have. I mean, I never even thought like that
Yeah.
specifically.
Mm-hmm.
I would say the biggest thing that I thought of kind of making it by
Yes.
was really like finding a wife that was open.
Oh, you know
I
what?
really thought of
I
I
mean,
really thought of
hey,
finding a lavender wife.
yeah.
Um, and that was really what the plan was for a short period of time, was like
Huh.
I would find a wife that I could ultimately be my true self behind closed doors and in
Yeah.
secret, and
Mm-hmm.
have somebody that would attend the events and do
Yeah.
the things that we were supposed to do. And I even had it
Oh, wow.
planned that she could have a side dude, but like he has to kind of look a little bit like me so that our kids would look right, but they still wouldn't be my kids. I had the plans.
Oh my gosh, that is so.
uh,
I mean, I'm definitely picking up what you're putting down. I mean, you.
so I mean, and that's I think that's why I kind of asked, because I
Mm-hmm.
think ultimately everybody has a different thing. And
Mm-hmm.
some people, their thing is possibly taking their own life or things like that. There's some
Right.
people that figure out their plan to live closeted forever. There's all types of different scenarios. And I
Wow.
think being able to speak that and really talk to kind of how your thought process was in that time frame
Mhm.
is huge, because there's other people that are thinking it.
Yeah, it's tough because I mean I would be lying if I said that I didn't have thoughts of like, oh, maybe it's not worth going through this.
Yeah.
And it's almost like double oppression because you're Black or a person of color, and then adding being queer to that, it's like, my God, we are amazing, but at the same time, it's just like a lot of hardships, and
Yeah.
it's like, is life
Yeah.
even worth? Is it even like worth that? Thankfully, I haven't gotten all the way to the edge, and that's something that I don't take lightly. I'm grateful because I know that's not everyone's story, unfortunately. And for anyone that might be tuning in, I mean, if you are dealing with something like that, like please talk to someone. I know it's easier said than done, but if you're able
Yeah.
to find even just that one person, that confidant to just kind of share what you're going through, because believe it or not, when you hold things in, and I'm a living witness, when you hold things in too long, you'll end up really exploding and it ends up being a
Yeah.
mess. But if you're able to get it outward, you'll be surprised how much that will lift off of your shoulders. But like, know that you're here for a reason. Know that you are special. Know that you are loved. And unfortunately, even if you don't find that in your own family, you'll end up creating your own family of people that will support you and lift you up, and bring out the best in you. And like I said, I wish it was easy. Sometimes it is hard work, but you can stand back and be like, damn, I did that. Sometimes people
Yeah.
didn't have any other choice, but um, you will be amazed at what can come from that. Yeah.
Yeah, for sure.
Mm-hmm.
And I've never said this on the podcast before, and I
Mm-hmm.
will say this today, and I think this might be something that I add to my podcasting.
Yeah.
But for anybody that is listening to the podcast or watching it on YouTube, if you are in a really dark place and don't have somebody to talk to, Girl Buys Messenger on Instagram is always there. And my goal for this podcast is really to touch as many people as I can and make sure that people have a place to feel seen,
Mm-hmm.
that people
Yeah.
have stories that they can relate to and see that there are people that are growing, and that it does really get better.
Yeah.
Um, And so if you really feel like you have nobody to talk to, please reach out and,
Yeah.
just know I'm a real person. I will listen. Um,
Yeah.
I will say that, if my inbox gets too full, I'll make a team of people and we'll get it going.
Man, shoot, I'll be on that team.
Yeah,
we,
there
we
you go.
we need you here, seriously. So
Yeah, we need
reach
we
out.
need everybody here. So,
Hey,
um, thank you for coming to therapy today. No, I'm just
yeah,
kidding.
in a way it was truly, like I said, a lot of this stuff it's not that I haven't talked about it or haven't talked about it
Yeah,
in a while, but sometimes it's good to kind of center, this particular part of, your identity in your life. So it's
yeah.
been
And I think
riveting.
a lot of us don't take the time to truly think about kind of where we started and where we
Hmm.
are now
Yeah,
and where we see ourselves in the future. I think we
absolutely.
we live so much in the moment, and
Hmm.
I think so many of us are trying to survive the day
Hmm.
that we don't take a second and see how far we've come.
Hmm.
But
Yeah.
ultimately, we are part of a group of people who like to share love,
Hmm.
share kindness, have a
Yeah.
good time,
Oh
have a
yeah.
good drink,
Okay, another round, another round.
right? Throw a little ass and have some
Yes,
fun, and that's it. And I think
absolutely.
if we spent a little bit more time spreading love instead of hate,
Yeah.
um, yeah, I know that you have come to a place now where you have kind of began to live more authentically yourself
Hmm.
day to day. And I think I am excited to watch the remainder of your journey in coming into your full self because
Yeah.
I do feel like since I've known you, there are times where I see that like you're a little bit more reserved. And
Mhm.
then I've also
Yeah.
seen you very comfortable and very you. And it is two
Yeah.
different people. And
Fire.
what I love about it is that the people that accept you for who you are, you're very open with. And
Mhm.
um,
Yeah.
seeing you in that light gives me a lot of hope that there's a lot of people out here that might have similar stories and might be going through the same things.
Hmm.
And it takes time, it's not easy, and it's part of a growing process.
It
And
is.
as long as you take it one day at a time, get more confident in yourself, love yourself more. I think that's something that we don't harp on enough is a majority of the reasons that a lot of us are reserved or feel a certain type of way or
Mhm.
whatever boils back down to how much you love yourself. And I think
Yeah.
being able to get there is really important.
That's yeah, that's really true. I mean, you hit it on the nail. I think a lot of us, and I'll even include myself, sometimes there's one foot in, I guess, what you maybe thought you would be like, or there's one foot in like, oh, kind of worried about what people think, want to conform and fit in, and then there's one foot in, I authentically love myself, I'm unapologetic. So it's like after a while, it does get exhausting having to
Yeah.
switch constantly. So for anyone that's like dealing with that, know that you're not alone and that there's going to be bumps in the road, growing pains, if you will, until you get to that point where it
Yeah.
doesn't matter where you are, who you're with, you're going to be you. And we need that because we already have someone that's like this person. So be yourself. We don't have anyone like you, so we need you. We already have them.
Right.
So bring what you got to the table. Yeah.
Definitely. So, with such an exciting story, we bring this podcast to an end. And we're going to end this podcast like we do every other podcast here at Girl Bye. And the only way we know how. Who would you like to officially say girl bye to?
Oh my gosh. Okay. Well, there's a few people, but there's a one person in particular. I want to say girl bye to CB. Okay. And the reason why is because we had a conversation about manliness, and there was a threat of, because of who I decide to love and pursue, that makes me less of a man. And when you put two and two together, there are some things that I have done and that I have brought to the table that CB has not. So we're talking about who's manlier. I don't mean no harm. I'm all about humility, taking the high road, but that is the person that I would say girl bye to. I feel like it was playful banter, but there was some real shit underneath. But
Yeah.
I'm gonna say him, yeah.
Yeah, it sounds like it's one of those moments where it's kind of like being a little shady.
Yes.
Um,
Very much tree
and
branches. Yeah.
girl bye.
Hit the road, Jack.
Perfect. Period. So, anything else you would like to add before we go?
The only thing that I would add, and I say this a lot, I don't remember who I heard it from. So if they're maybe watching, feel free to take the credit. But someone used the I guess they painted the illustration of once this life is over, you're gonna be the only person that's in that box, right? That coffin, that urn, whatever you decide. So use that as sort of a, not to, get dark, but use that as a push for live your life for you. Because at the end of the day, you're the only one that's getting out of here. Try your best to not hold on to things and try to operate in peace and love as much as you can, because that's a lot easier than operating in anger and disappointment. And that also causes a lot of wrinkles too. So if you want to look youthful
Yes.
and remain unproblematic, but no, like in all seriousness, I would say just
Yeah.
try to live your life for you and how you want it to be. You're not so much to please other people, because I'm also a former people pleaser. And I think sometimes I do go back and I have to remind myself, like, no, that stage is over with in my life. So try to keep that in mind. It's good for you as long as you don't hurt anybody, treat anybody bad. Just do things in the line of you. Yeah,
I love that.
that's all.
And one quick thing to add to that.
Yeah, please do.
I want everybody to really take a second and realize how short life is. And you only get
Yeah.
one of these.
Yeah.
So every moment you spend in a miserable situation or hiding who you are or trying to be someone else to please other people,
Yeah.
that's another moment that you're not experiencing life for what it ultimately is.
Mhm.
And if you look around, the people enjoying life the most are the people that are living their authentic selves and just
Absolutely.
going through the day.
Yeah.
So just remember that and really care for yourself. So I
Mhm.
completely agree. Well, thank you
You know.
so much, Calvin, for joining us here today at Girl
Oh,
Bye.
woo. Maddie, thank you so much for having me. I'm like so ecstatic that I get to stop by. Girl, bye. I really,
Well,
really
we will
appreciate
definitely
it.
we'll definitely have you come back and
Yes, please.
maybe jump on some of our other things going on. And thank you so much for taking the time to join us and tell your story.
Yeah.
I know that it can be sometimes very difficult to kind of go through this process of reliving certain situations. A lot of us put these down in coffins and hide them away so that we don't have to relive the moments, and bringing
Yeah.
them back up and going through them, I think, is also a form of growth, and being able
Hmm.
to express that and hopefully give some light to somebody
Yeah.
else that's going through it, that's fighting through it, that's trying to figure it out. So we're here to share that. So thank you for joining
100%.
us today on Girl Bye. Catch us every Monday where we drop a new episode at 6 p.m. and we'll catch you on the next one.
Girl, bye.
Girl, bye.
Girl, bye.
Girl,
Girl, bye.
bye.
Bye, girl, bye.